Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It was called Through the Lens of Time. And as the episode starts, the new medical officer, Mr. Gamble, talks in his personal log about how he's enjoying his new post on the Enterprise. Chapel and Corby prepare to execute a test or experiment of some kind on a dig on the homeworld of the Macroon, whom have given Starfleet permission to do what Chapel's team is going to do, but which has also declined Federation membership repeatedly, before Chapel and La'an talk a bit about Spock and how she and he are taking it cash. Now, I briefly want to talk about what this relationship is called. I've heard it called La'ak. I myself coined it Spa'an, but Mr. Chad McClellan, in one of my Star Trek Strange New Worlds Facebook groups that I belong to, has said that we should be calling it La'an Far, and I couldn't agree more. Good call, Chad. Anyway, next, Captain Patel gets a treatment in sickbay for her Gorn situation, and still seems to be quite human. Mr. Gamble gets to go on his first away mission, being part of the dig, about which he is quite excited. Chapel and Spock talk about he and Corby will get along during the mission. At a mission brief, thereto related, Ortegas' brother records footage for a documentary before shamelessly flirting with Lieutenant Uhura shortly thereafter down on the planet, where the dig is partly accomplished with the ship's deflector beams, instantaneously uncovering an ancient structure that Chapel and Corby believe may hold inside of it information about how an ancient species supposedly achieved immortality. The landing party gains entry to the structure by way of Chapel allowing it to take a sample of her blood, and they soon discover that they can neither transmit communication signals or be beamed out from inside. And then it isn't long before they discover some corpses, which it would seem were trapped in the structure at some point and starved to death. Spock then correctly points out that they need to exit the structure immediately and inform the captain that the danger level has at least potentially increased, but he's talked out of doing that by Chapel and Corby, though he covers for this by making it look like he was deferring to the wishes of the member of the party from the planet's own delegation, the Macroon that went along with them, who tells him that discovering whatever can be discovered by continuing the mission is something that his people would want. They then immediately find some kind of book with a device in it that, in short order, explodes and blinds Mr. Gamble by seemingly removing his eyeballs, at which point he's immediately sent back to the ship and treated with a device that will apparently lead to the bioengineering of new eyes for him before the captain orders everyone back to the ship. But before everyone can comply with this order, they're already back inside the structure and indeed get trapped inside it, and the Macroon member of the party gets evaporated trying to escape. Aboard Enterprise, Mr. Gamble's eyes are resisting regeneration for some reason. Back on the planet, the landing party decides that the only way out is through, which of course is ridiculous because they totally discounted the idea of people coming down from the ship and trying to blast them out or get them out some other way, because they thought that the dead guys in the room who starved to death only starved to death because they stayed and waited and didn't try to go through the structure to get out some other way instead. After the landing party are separated into multiple groups when trying to enter the next chamber, Chapel and La'an discover a statue that seems to be phasing in and out of space-time, at the base of which there are at least two languages, one of which is Earth Chinese, while Spock and Corby continue investigating and seem to discover more of the explosives that took Mr. Gamble's eyes, but only because Spock was looking through a device that allowed him to see things that would otherwise be invisible. It turns out that these little grenades, or whatever they are, contain very scary-looking eel-type beings. Back on Enterprise, the captain explains why, for the moment, they can't go down to the planet to try to rescue the landing party since the Macoons have denied them permission to do so. And an examination of the fragments of the little bomb that took Mr. Gamble's eyes is determined to be something other than what it seems. It's not just a normal explosive. The doctor then has to tell Mr. Gamble that apparently his brain is dead, even though he seems quite alive, before he gets temporarily taken over by an outside intelligence that seems to know about Mbenga's daughter, at which point Captain Batel enters the room, and it takes him over again, at which point he communicates with Captain Batel in some alien language that For some reason, she understands, and they engage in a vicious bit of fisticuffs before Captain Pike comes in with a security team. At which point, Mr. Gamble runs off, and Captain Patel has to be subdued with a hyperspray. Once security and Dr. Mbenga catch up with Mr. Gamble, he's holding another security officer at phaser point, but he is successfully talked down by the doctor. Back on the planet, it would seem that the landing party is actually not all in separate rooms, but in the same room on different dimensional planes. And by working together to manipulate the structures around them, they merge the dimensional planes and can see each other again, as well as that the path to the door out seems to have disappeared. As Captain Patel recovers, she talks about how she doesn't know why, but she had an overwhelming desire to exterminate Mr. Gamble during their fight. The landing party, meanwhile, determines that they have to walk across empty space where the bridge to the door used to be in order to turn the bridge on, Chapel first, because they're in some kind of weird backward causality loop, and she has to go before everyone else because everyone is only in there because she gave the building her blood. On Enterprise, Mr. Gamble seems to know things about the security officer that's guarding him in the brig that he shouldn't know before he reaches through the force field and kills said security officer and walks the rest of the way through the force field, picking up the guard's phaser. Back on the planet, Chapel bravely takes her walk of faith with the others following right behind, and they are able to get to the door and escape the facility. Back on the ship, Mr. Gamble holds the chief engineer, Lieutenant Sam Kirk, and Scotty at phaser point asking for the command codes, though he's interrupted by Dr. Mbenga, who was also holding a phaser. Though, for some reason, he does not immediately stun Mr. Gamble, and instead offers himself to the demon inside Mr. Gamble, but Pelia doesn't hold back. She shoots Mr. Gamble and kills him for some reason, rather than stunning him, at which point the entity leaves him and is captured by Scotty in its original ball that was reconstructed and transported into the pattern buffer. At a debriefing meeting, the crew realizes that the remainder of the entities down on the planet need to be contained before Pelia apologizes to the doctor for killing Mr. Gamble, which she states she did because he was no longer really there, before she launches into a dramatic monologue about the dangers of the entity, after which she offers to repeat this monologue, but looking towards the camera for the documentary, which Mr. Ortegas declines to take her up on. Before the episode ends, the doctor calls Mr. Gamble's family to tell them of his demise, and the Enterprise computer in sickbay seems to experience a little glitch with alien script coming up on the screen. And that's where the episode ended. So I actually liked this episode, and this time around, that comes with very few caveats. I'm a little disappointed that it took them to the halfway point of the season to finally actually explore a strange new world and to actually let Spock behave like Spock. This is what they should be doing every week, with little exceptions here and there where the characters are allowed to be out of sorts because of one outside influence or another, in his case, or because of just normal human imperfection. But he should act like a frickin' Vulcan more often than not, and he does that in this episode, and it was great to see. I wish they had told us a little bit more about the Macroon, and I wish we had seen a few more Macroon people than just the one guy. But it was just great to have a new species and to see a new planet and to have them just be explorers again. It was really great. I liked the landing party's leather jackets, which we may or may not have seen before, even though they totally go against established lore. And while we're on the topic of cosmetics, I do have to say, kind of in a negative note, that I hated Mr. Gamble's hair. It's not classy to speak ill of the recently deceased, but I suppose I don't have to worry about not liking his hair anymore. I don't know what it is with young people, like now in the real world, where they wear their hair all weird. It's a young people thing. I don't love it, but that's probably just because I'm old. Anyway, overall, I thought this was a real example of what Star Trek is supposed to be week to week, exploring new worlds, meeting new species, experiencing new and crazy scientific things. You know, I can't really say that I understood all of the science of this episode about how the Macroon were apparently at some point in time in the past manipulating dimensional physics or dimensional science in order to somehow expand their lifespans. I didn't really get all the technobabble, but I don't have to have gotten it. The crew got it, and the crew dealt with it, and it's what we're supposed to see them doing. So I like that a whole lot. except for a couple of lines of dialogue, they left out all the talk about who is in love with this one and who is not in love with that one and who is therefore forlorn and who is therefore, happy where they're at. And they left all that 90210 stuff out, and I was happy for it. And that sounds kind of weird because last week I was like, oh, I like this relationship between Spock and La'an. I do, if I'm stuck with it, I have to say that I do enjoy it. But if it went away completely, I wouldn't be the least bit sad. It's just that while it's on the screen, while they're dealing with it, I happen to like it. I happen to hate that it's him because he shouldn't be like in a romantic thing, really. But I like their chemistry very much, and I like Christina Chong, and I like Jess Bush as well. But I don't know, somehow the on just does it for me a little more. But I'm so happy that they left it out. This was just a regular episode of Star Trek the way it's supposed to be, and I like that. One sort of note about procedural stuff, I'm not really sure why the landing party deferred to Spock, being that he's the chief science officer, versus Christine, who was supposed to be in charge of the mission. As to whether or not protocol should be followed when the mission got a little more dangerous, because even if it wasn't going to be up to Christine, it's La'an who was the chief security officer, and if anybody was going to override Chapel, it should have been her, not Spock, just because it was a scientific mission and he's the chief science officer. That didn't make any sense. The catalyst for them needing to decide whether they were going to inform the captain of what was happening was a security risk event, not a scientific discovery question. So I think the only reason they deferred to Spock is because it put him in a position where he was deciding whether or not to go along with Chapel's wishes. And he was either going to side with the rule book or side with Dr. Corby, and by extension and simultaneously, Nurse Chapel. And they wanted to put him in that sort of dramatic pickle, which nothing really came of. But he did side with her, and it did lead to problems. And so I don't know, maybe something will come of it. I don't think we're done with this ancient species from this planet. I think they have somehow invaded the ship's systems, possibly because that one entity that took over Mr. Gamble is technically in the system, although in its containment ball and broken down into molecular components in the pattern buffer. But I don't think we're done with them. So I think we're going to see more of them in upcoming episodes. But yeah, that's really it. I mean, again, I liked it because it was just regular Star Trek and did what Star Trek is supposed to do. But I'm bummed out that it took them to the halfway point of the season to give us an episode where they're actually visiting a strange new world, when that's the name of the damn show. So there you go. That's really it. So I'm going to get out of here, but I will be back with another video soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.